Assalamu alaikum. Today is the 42nd lecture of Software Requirements Engineering. In the last lecture, we talked about the requirements engineering for agile methods, and we talked about in detail how agile processes work and how requirements engineering is handled in those methods. Today, we are going to have discussion on another very interesting topic, and that is requirements engineering for web-based information systems. Now, before we discuss in detail what web-based information systems are and what are some of the aspects in which we need to focus as far as the requirements engineering activities are concerned, let's talk about the Internet. Internet has been a phenomena which has changed the way businesses are conducted worldwide. And this has become the preferred medium of conducting businesses for a large number of business enterprises, for a large number of retailers, for a large number of wholesalers, and similarly for a large number of other kinds of enterprises which deal with different kinds of activities. Now, interesting thing is that this medium is not only being used by enterprises, but also by other organizations, by universities, by governments, by insurance companies, and everything, and by airlines. And so there is a lot of transactions that are happening over the Internet with very little physical contact being achieved between the supplier and the consumer of what I would call services, because this word services include a lot of things. It can include products, it can include transactions, it can include a lot of other things. And so we need to focus our attention on what is Internet and what implications has it had over the last several years now, and this applies to the future also, and what implications would the advancement in Internet related technologies have over the next several years, and then we need to see how we need to change our requirements engineering activities, or if at all we need to change our requirements engineering activities, and these are the things that we will talk about in today's lecture. Internet is basically connection of a network of computers. You can provide any services that you want. You can sell anything that you want over the Internet. This business or commerce can continue for 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and without interruption, without having any hours off limit. You can buy things over the Internet in the middle of the night, and you can sell things over the Internet, that is, make things available for people to look at them and for people to place orders, and you don't have to be awake to answer their queries. And so this is the thing that has caught on with the business community in particular, that the availability of Internet, that is, has provided them with a tool, with a medium, with a marketplace where they can market their products 24 hours a day with very little money and with very few resources as far as humans are concerned, as far as marketing people are concerned. And so this is an enormous change in how businesses are conducted now as compared to, let's say, they were conducted 20 years ago or 30 years ago, or for that matter, even when they were not doing using the Internet to sell things. So this is a fundamental shift in the way of doing business. And since we in the software industry are building systems which enable both suppliers as well as consumers, that is software products, to facilitate these things, to facilitate business transactions. This is a great news for us, for software professionals. Secondly, the internet fundamentally is useful only if it is using excellent software. And so the internet provides us with the hardware and the networking technologies, but we in this business of software are privileged to write that software which makes these transactions happen, which makes business happen, which makes these 24-hour shopping mall available to everyone who wants to visit in odd hours, who wants to buy things in the middle of the night without having to actually go to a physical brick store. And so this is a great news for people in the software industry, and we should jump on the bandwagon of developing high quality software based on the internet medium. So what are different kinds of web information systems? Now the question is, what makes web systems so different from the traditional software systems that their planning and construction requires a unique development process? And that is something that I've tried to touch upon just a few minutes ago, that the web is available to its consumers as well as to suppliers 24 hours a day without interruption. And in fact, interruption is not tolerated in the web community. And the people who choose to buy things or to sell things over the net don't like the fact that the net is down or their services are not available to their customers even for as short a period as 5 minutes. And so this is a very important thing that you need to keep in mind while considering the elements which are different from web systems as compared to traditional software systems. So this is very important. Firstly, we need to understand also the different kinds of web information systems, and we'll talk about them in detail throughout the lecture today. So let's say, what are the different types of web-based information models? Firstly, there are those that deliver advertising and promotion. And so these are basically, we can call them as banners. These are web systems which are there. They are typically static, and they are there continuously delivering some sort of information to their visitors, to their consumers. Now, this information can be changing over a period of time, and if it is changed specifically and statically, then the usefulness of this type of information systems is less as compared to if the information was changing dynamically, that we are managing this via some sort of databases and some sort of logic. But even if the static information systems are used, these types of information system models are very efficient. They convey their message 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, without any holiday, without any time off. A consumer wants to get information about a particular product, about a particular service that a company is providing. All they have to do is to log on to their company, that company's website, and that information would be available to them. And so this type of model is, though least useful, is still very useful. Now that's sort of a very confusing sort of thing that you need to understand. Let's say I want to buy a book and I want to read reviews about that book, and all those reviews have already been published on a website. All I have to do is to go to that website and read the reviews. It's a static information, it's always there, but it's a great resource for me. It's a great information tool for me to make a decision on whether I want to buy a book or not. The second type of information models are those that assist businesses' workflows. And these are also very important. They have their own information capital that enables businesses to facilitate them in their workings. Third, there are those information systems that facilitate inter-organizational interaction. Many companies in the world are now switching to internet only, or I should say internet or intranet only communication or interaction that goes within an organization. And this is such a phenomenal change in the way we look at things and the way we interact with fellow workers within that organization, that there is no need for paper communication. Few meetings arranged, and all of the discussion and all of the communication that happens through internet tools. Either that's an email service, or that's a net meeting type of service, or some sort of SharePoint portals sort of services. And then there are blogs in which employees of a company, of an organization, can communicate with each other to convey to them the ideas that they're working on. And so this is also a very useful, very popular, and I would say a sort of information model which has the potential to change the way businesses are conducted in the coming years and decades. And then finally, probably the most valuable as far as the business community is concerned, are those types of information systems that support multi-participant trading. We have different names for it. We can call it B2B, B2C, and those sort of things. But this sort of summarization captures all kinds of web-based information system models, and all of them have substantially changed the way things are taken care of in business communities, in business enterprises. A large number of companies are now shifting their bulk of businesses to the web and making them web-based. Let's take the example of airlines. Airlines have slowly shifted, but surely they are for the long haul, that they have provided the facility to prospective travelers to buy their tickets online, and to eliminate the concept of paper tickets, and everyone gets an e-ticket now, and one doesn't have to go to a travel agent or to an airline. All they need is to, with the help of a computer, they log into the website, select their destination and their departure date and all the flight details that are necessary, and provide their credit card numbers. And there you go. You have a confirmed reservation, and you have actually a seat allotted to you, and you have the receipt printed on your home computer or printer, or your office printer for that matter. And the convenience is such that you have eliminated all the unnecessary phone calls, the visits to travel agents. You have eliminated this horrible experience of sitting in the traffic for long hours just to pick up your ticket from the travel agent. And so the benefits to the end consumer are enormous, and people are loving it. Everything that can be put on the internet will be put on the internet, and people would start utilizing this facility in a large number, even in those countries where the technologies have not really caught up to the mark as far as the first world is concerned. But I can tell you that there are countries which are not fully developed, but they have started these programs in which they have provided wireless networks to even the remote agriculture communities using these information and internet and communication technologies. And the agriculture and the small farmers and agriculturists are then able to communicate their needs to suppliers in the larger cities. Let's say that the farmer needs some sort of fertilizers, or they have recognized that there's a pest attack, and so they need to they need certain sprays, and that medicine needs to be delivered to the farmer, and they can go to those common ICT centers where internet facility has been provided, and they inform the different kinds of suppliers to give them the advice as well as the necessary sprays and fertilizers so that they can protect their crops from all sorts of damages. Now, as I was telling you, that each kind of web-based information system model that we have discussed, we discussed 4 types, by the way, emphasizes distinct aspects of website designs depending on their purposes. The ones which are, for example, the first ones that we talked about were the banner sort of websites, require minimal effort and also minimal security concerns. I don't say that they don't have to be secure. They certainly have to be secure, but the need for security is not as high as, for example, if we are talking about multi-participant business transactions. And so whenever we are dealing with a particular web-based information system model, we need to look at its priorities, and we need to develop those models based on those priorities. So some focus on supporting business-to-business transactions, the construction of online metaphors for business activity and customer assistance. And this is what I was talking about, that whenever you have customers and consumers and you have suppliers visiting a portal, a website, in which multiple sorts of transactions can be performed, then you need to be very careful, and there has to be a separate different kind of requirements and activities performed for different kinds of web-based information systems. Some other models look at promoting organizational brands, building market trust and credibility, and that's also a very important part of marketing for the business. Similarly, some other models accentuate web contents, layouts, navigation, and search for organizational information. So again, the goal of each of the web-based information system model is different, and as software engineers and as requirements engineers in particular, you need to understand the differences between these kinds of web-based models, and unless you do that, you will not be able to correctly and thoroughly conduct the requirements engineering processes, which are very important, because we'll take up this topic a little bit later. But before that, I had mentioned few things that you can do on the web. Commonly we think e-commerce we can do. We do e-banking now. We have auctioning sites, very, very famous auctioning sites available on the net. Then there's a lot of emphasis on taking government to the people. So there is this concept of e-government worldwide, everywhere, in Pakistan, in US, in UK, in Europe. Governments are trying to facilitate its citizens so that they can have a relationship with the government, so that they can feel participation in different kinds of government activities. The governments are providing different kinds of reports, different kinds of laws, different kinds of information that the citizens can use, and also citizens of other countries can use. So there's this new concept of e-voting that has not really caught up yet, but I can see in future that people would be voting without having to leave their homes. They can log into the computer and basically vote over the web. And so you can see how things are shaping up as far as the internet-based businesses are concerned. And then there is concept of healthcare. There's a lot of information provided to the patients on prevention via these internet websites. There's e-insurance, and also eventually you would go into what is known as the telemedicine. And the next step would be internet-based medicine, where you can have a sort of relationship with the healthcare provider. That can be a doctor or qualified practicing nurse sort of personnel, in which you can describe, a patient can describe his or her symptoms to the healthcare provider, and the healthcare provider then, based on the initial information, can start the treatment, and then further on these more elaborate tests and studies can be conducted. And insurance claims are being filed over the web. And so there are so many things. I wouldn't say e-commerce or e-banking or e-auctioning or e-government is the future. I would say e-everything is the future. And those companies who realize this are going to be the market leaders in whatever they're doing. If they're selling garments and they have selling over the web, they're going to be probably the best sellers. And people who are selling cars, if they get into selling over the web, then they will ensure that they have a greater market presence and market share in the years to come. Because I tell you, everything is going over the internet. Now, in the richness of web design issues, many issues directly concern web-based information systems customers and necessarily absorb requirements engineers. You see, we are directly selling to the customers. Now, I don't like this phrase selling. I would prefer the word providing services to the customers. That's a broad enough category to include basically everything. And so what does it tell us? It tells us that anything that has to do with customer, we need to find out. And it is your job as requirements engineers to do that. And so the requirements engineers have a more important role in web-based information system models as compared to the other models. And I would say this because the number of customers increase substantially. And so the web is available to anyone who has access to a computer and wants to visit different sites and buy things over the web. So apart from the obvious project stakeholders such as sponsors, customers, and users, the parties involved also include we're talking about the web-based information systems now. So the stakeholders include content developers, those people who write those website contents, copyright consultants, so that they ensure that there is no copyright violations, and if some copyright is being referred to, that proper referral is provided. Marketing and public relations specialists, media planners and strategists, creative and art directors, because these are the graphics oriented sites, and so you need to have access to these sort of specialists. You need to have access to graphic designers, multimedia and interaction developers, and many others who are often not considered by requirements engineers as having input into the specification of a traditional software system. And so there are lots of things which are different from our traditional software systems, and the number of stakeholders, as I've mentioned, increase substantially. The customer base increases substantially because we are not just selling to one person, we are selling to a large number, or we are providing services to a large number of stakeholders. And in those cases, whenever we have this situation, that is, the number of stakeholders is increasing, then there is always a possibility that their opinions will conflict with each other. In web-based information systems, these conflicts are firmly embedded not only in the needs of the software system to be developed, but rather in the business processes and objectives of online buyers and sellers, and in the constraints imposed on the system by agencies regulating the financial transactions or determining compliance with the laws of the land and international treaties. Now, this is very important because I can develop a website and I can put up a website and have people from other countries visit those websites and buy things. Now, this is international trade. I need to get licenses. I need to get permissions to import or export things. I need to have the proper permissions to accept funds for things that I've sold. And so there are agencies, there are stakeholders who would typically not be part of a normal retail store, for example, and they have their influence, and requirements engineers have a lot of work cut out for them. And so because of these things, the scope of concerns to be considered in the earliest stages of website construction is significantly enlarged. Now, this happens because that is the web-based information systems are basically market-driven models. This business model is a market-driven business model. That is, make things available to the customers and ensure that potential customers have information about these websites, and then it is up to the customers to come to those websites and make purchases. And so there are a lot of things that forces requirements engineers to think they need to concentrate on all these things that we've talked about, the regulations imposed by third parties, the international treaties, laws of land, and they need to worry about the requirements imposed by graphics designers and art directors and multimedia specialists, and also the customers. And so the work cut out for the requirements engineers is much more than in traditional software development. There is another problem, and that problem is that the delivery of web-enabled services, web-based products, is shorter typically than traditional software projects. And so typically one can say that delivery of web-enabled applications is something like 3 months. Now, that's a number that is not really scientific, but that's something that over the years has been agreed upon. And these 3 months is a short time, and this leaves very little time for any formal requirements gathering and consolidation. Now, that is again a very difficult task for the requirements engineers involved in developing the web-based information models to come up with a correct and complete set of requirements and have time to negotiate with different kinds of customers and different kinds of stakeholders. And so development of web-based information systems is a very heavy front-loaded set of activities, and these things then sort of ease out once we have the initial deliveries of the project completed. Now, these are the issues that we must address when we talk about requirements engineering as they relate to the web-based information systems. The current practices that we have seen are inadequate for WBS system, that is web-based information system projects, and they will not help the requirements engineers to come up with the expectations that we have just laid out for them. Failing requirements engineers in identification and characterization of the potential system users, that is a problem that we need to address. We need to also look at the needs and preferences of customers and the features required of the web-based system under development. So the work is enlarged. The good thing is the prototyping and experimentation is welcome, must be part of any requirements engineering activity. So any activity that is done needs to address the needs of the customers. There is a large number of stakeholders, as I've mentioned, and the good thing about working on web-based information systems is that the requirements engineers have the help also of graphic artists, of multimedia specialists, of people who were traditionally not involved in the software development process until later in the life cycle. But with short delivery cycles, the involvement of graphics artists and multimedia specialists in the requirements engineering activities is very important. So a stakeholder that falls under these categories has to be part of the requirements engineering activities, and that is a little bit different view from the traditional software engineering activities. Many organizations have tried to develop requirements engineering approaches for the development of web-based information systems. As I've said, that nothing is concrete yet, and we need to be focusing on the issues. But we will talk about these approaches just to give you a historical perspective on how organizations were dealing with the popularity of web and with the popularity of internet-based products and internet-based services, and they developed their own requirements engineering processes and requirements engineering approaches to deal with these things. But I'll tell you, in the end, I would give you some pointers as to what needs to be looked at rather than giving you one approach. I would give you few areas in which, as we use more and more internet-based technologies. So some organizations considered web development as a process with all its structure and complexity. Now, the other thing that is distinct for web-based development is that the technologies are different. I mean, you cannot go about using C++ and Pascal and Fortran for web development. So you need to be fully involved in the development process as far as the technologies are concerned. You need to focus on those technologies which are useful for web development or which are necessary for web development. They have their own structures, they have their own complexities, they have their own advantages, and so web development should be recognized as a process. That's the claim. And most of the difficulties with respect to the development of large websites can be attributed to the lack of suitable process for project team to follow, a suitable architecture or a project model for the development of web-enabled applications. So this approach early on recognized that there is need for a separate process for web development because the technologies are different, the delivery cycles are very short, the customer interaction is very important, and so the entire development approach was considered as a process. And the process involves, that is, the focus on web development was learning through experience. So one of the most significant points as a new and emerging trend associated with the development and evolution of web-enabled services is the acknowledgement of the importance of project teams to improve by learning through experience. اب یہ جو لرننگ تھرو ایکسپیرئنس ہے اس کی بھی میں آپ کو ایک تھوڑی سی انٹرسٹنگ اسپیکٹ بھی بتاتا ہوں. جب .com ببل برسٹ ہوا ہے تو وہ کمپنیز جو کہ فیل ہوئیں ان کے امپلائیز کی بڑی ڈیمانڈ انڈسٹری میں شروع ہو گئی, اور اس کی وجہ یہ تھی کہ جو کمپنیز بزنس میں ابھی رہ گئی تھیں یا اپنا بزنس انٹرنیٹ کے ذریعے بڑھانا چاہتی تھیں یا انٹرنیٹ بیسڈ بزنس شروع کرنا چاہتی تھیں, ان کا یہ پرسپیکٹو تھا کہ ہم ایسی کمپنی سے امپلائیز کو حاصل کریں جو کہ انٹرنیٹ بزنس میں فیل ہوئی ہیں اور ان کے ایکسپیرئنس سے ہم آئندہ بہتر طور پر اپنی ویب سائٹس کو ڈیولپ کریں اور جو انٹرنیٹ ہے اس کے اوپر بزنس کریں. تو یہ ایک عجیب فنامنا تھا کہ جو .com کے فیلیئرس تھے اس کے نتیجہ میں بھی انڈسٹری نے اپنے آپ کو رائٹ ڈائریکشن میں ٹرین کیا اور ان امپلائیز کے ایکسپیرئنسز سے پھر اب ایک بہت بہتر طور پر ایک ٹیکنالوجی کو یوز کرتے ہوئے بہت اچھا بزنس ہو رہا ہے. تو میں کہہ سکتا ہوں کہ انٹرنیٹ کے جو ارلی ایکسپیرئنسز تھے ان کے نتیجے میں جو سکسیسز تھیں ان سے بھی انڈسٹری نے سیکھا ہے, یعنی کہ وی آر کنٹینیوس لرننگ فرام ایکسپیرئنس, ناٹ اونلی پازیٹیو ایکسپیرئنس بٹ آلسو فیلئر سے بھی ہم نے بہت سیکھا ہے. اور جو لرننگ تھرو ایکسپیرئنس کا کانسیپٹ ہے وہ ہمارے سکسیسز پہ بھی اپلیکیبل ہوا ہے اور ہمارے فیلئرس کے اوپر بھی اپلیکیبل ہوا ہے. اسی طرح ایک اور ڈیولپمنٹ اپروچ جو ویب بیسڈ انفارمیشن سسٹمز کے لیے ہے اس کو ہم کہتے ہیں انٹرنیٹ کامرس ڈیولپمنٹ میتھڈالوجی, ICDM. ICDM combines the elements of business analysis as well as system development. Internet commerce is one of those fields that necessitates intense business activity as part of their system development, and thus it requires a thorough analysis of its place in the overall business strategy. اور یہی بات میں نے آپ کو پہلے بتائی تھی کہ جو کسٹمر کے ساتھ ریلیشن شپ ہے اور باقی اسٹیک ہولڈرس کے ساتھ ریلیشن شپ ہے وہ بہت زیادہ ہے ایز کمپیئر ٹو ادر development approaches. Customers and suppliers and users of the system are encouraged to be involved at various stages of e-business operations and participate in periodic reviews. اور یہی ایک کی ہمارا common point بن رہا ہے where different organizations are using their own processes to develop internet based applications. لیکن ایک چیز بار بار آپ کے علم میں آئے گی اور وہ یہ کہ کسٹمر کی انوالومنٹ جو ہے وہ بہت زیادہ ہے, ارلی آن ہے, اور جو فرنٹ لوڈڈ ایکٹیویٹیز ہیں وہ زیادہ ہیں ان ویب ڈیولپمنٹ ایز کمپیئر ٹو ادر ٹریڈیشنل سافٹ ویئر ڈیولپمنٹ اپروچز. اس ICDM کے اندر there are two requirements gathering techniques that are emphasized. Number one, it's brainstorming. اور برین اسٹارمنگ کے اوپر ہم کافی ڈیٹیل سے ڈسکشن کر چکے ہیں ان دی ارلیئر پارٹ آف دی سیمسٹر. اور اس کے علاوہ دوسری جو ٹیکنیک ہے وہ گروپ ریکوائرمنٹس سیشنز ہیں. یہ بھی برین اسٹارمنگ کی طرح ہی ہیں, گروپ میں ڈسکشنز ہیں اور ان کے اوپر پرٹیکولرلی ریکوائرمنٹس کے حوالے سے, فارمل ریکوائرمنٹس کے حوالے سے ڈسکشن ہے. تو اگین انوالومنٹ آف دا کسٹمر, کیونکہ دونوں یہی چیزیں ہیں, کسٹمرز کی بیس آپ کی بہت زیادہ ہے اور اس بیس کی آپ نے فیڈ بیک کو لے کر اس کے ریپرزینٹیو اسٹیک ہولڈر سے اس فیڈ بیک کو لے کر اپنے پروڈکٹس کے اندر انکارپوریٹ کرنا ہے. ورنہ what would happen is کہ you would develop websites which will not be useful to the customers. شوقیہ ویب سائٹ بنانے کی ڈسکشن ہم نہیں کر رہے, اس وقت ہم جو ڈسکشن کر رہے ہیں وہ بزنس ویب سائٹس کے حوالے سے ہے. اب ICDM کے حوالے سے ایک بات میں اور کرنا چاہتا ہوں اور وہ یہ ہے کہ ICDM does not recommend, that's Internet Commerce Development Methodology, does not recommend any specific model or a process where we can address specific requirements engineering issues. Requirements engineering کے issues جو particularly ICDM میں ہیں وہ اس لحاظ سے بھی ہیں کہ ICDM also emphasizes on learning from experience. لیکن کلیئرلی کوئی بات کوئی پروسیس ماڈل یا کوئی میتھڈ یوز کرنے کے بارے میں بات اس میں نہیں ہے. تو جیسا کہ پہلے اس ڈسکشن کو سٹارٹ کرنے سے پہلے میں نے بتایا تھا کہ ابھی تک جو بھی اپروچز یوز کی جا رہی ہیں وہ اتنی اسٹیبلش نہیں ہوئیں, اتنی آرگنائز نہیں ہیں کہ ہم پوائنٹ کر سکیں کہ جی اگر آپ یہ میتھڈالوجی اپروچ کرتے ہیں یا یہ ٹیکنیک یوز کرتے ہیں تو آپ کو جو انٹرنیٹ بیسڈ اپلیکیشنز ہیں ان کی ڈیولپمنٹ میں کمپریہنسو گائیڈ لائنس اویلیبل ہو جائیں گی. اسی طرح ایک اور ٹیکنیک ہے جس کو ویب انفارمیشن سسٹمز ڈیولپمنٹ میتھڈالوجی بھی کہہ سکتے ہیں یا وزڈم بھی کہہ سکتے ہیں. دس از امپلائڈ ود دی ایم فار ایویلویٹنگ دی افیکٹونیس آف پری ویب میتھڈالوجی ٹو دا ویب بیسڈ میتھڈالوجی. اس میں ریڈ اور پروٹوٹائپنگ افیکٹو ٹیکنیکس کے طور پہ وزڈم پروجیکٹس میں یوز کی جا سکتی ہیں اور یہی ان کی ریکمنڈیشن ہے. جیسا کہ میں نے آپ کو پہلے بھی بتایا تھا کہ پروٹوٹائپنگ جو ہے دیٹ از اے یوزفل اینڈ نیسسری ٹیکنیک دیٹ کین بی اپلائڈ ان ویب بیسڈ انفارمیشن سسٹمس. تو یہ تو چند اپروچز تھیں جو کہ ہسٹوریکل پرسپیکٹو کے لحاظ سے صرف ڈسکس کی ہیں, لیکن یہ بات بڑی کلیئرلی ہمارے سامنے ہے, اس ڈسکشن سے پہلے بھی تھی اور اب بھی ہے کہ کوئی ایک میتھڈالوجی, کوئی ایک اپروچ ایسی نہیں ہے کہ جس کے بارے میں ہم کہہ سکیں کہ یہ وہ چیزیں ہیں جن کے اوپر آپ ان اپروچز کو اگر آپ یوز کریں تو آپ بہت اچھے ویب سائٹس یا ویب بیسڈ انفارمیشن سسٹمز بنا سکتے ہیں. اب میں ڈسکشن کرنا چاہتا ہوں ان ایشوز کی طرف لے جانا چاہتا ہوں کہ جن کو ایڈریس کرنا ضروری ہے کسی بھی ویب بیسڈ انفارمیشن سسٹم کو بنانے کے لیے, اور ان ایشوز کو اور یہ کنسٹرینٹس اپنے ذہن میں رکھیں کہ ہمارے پاس شارٹر لائف سائیکل ہے. اس فیکٹ کو اپنے ذہن میں رکھیں کہ ہم نے کسٹمر کی انوالومنٹ اس میں رکھنی ہے, اور یہ کہ جو ہمارے پاس اسٹیک ہولڈرز ہیں وہ کافی زیادہ ہیں, اور بعض ہم اور ریگولیٹری کنسٹرینٹس میں بھی آ جاتے ہیں, بعض لاز ہیں, انٹرنیشنل ٹریٹیز ہیں, ان کو بھی ہمیں ذہن میں رکھنا پڑے گا. تو کون سی ایسی چیزیں ہیں جن کے اوپر اگر ہم ڈسکشن کو اینڈ کریں کہ اگر آپ جب ویب سائٹس ڈیولپ کر رہے ہوں یا ویب بیسڈ انفارمیشن سسٹمز بنا رہے ہوں تو وہ کون سے ایریاز ہیں جن پر آپ فوکس کریں تو آپ کی جو گولز ہیں وہ اچیو ہو سکتے ہیں, اور وہ فوکس ہے نان فنکشنل ریکوائرمنٹس کے اوپر. ویب بیسڈ انفارمیشن سسٹم ماڈلز کی ڈیولپمنٹ کے لیے یہ انتہائی ضروری ہے کہ آپ نان فنکشنل ریکوائرمنٹس کے اوپر بہت ایمفیسس کریں, بہت زیادہ توجہ دیں. ان کو جب آپ پرابلمس کو دیکھ رہے ہوں, جب آپ انالیسس کر رہے ہوں, جب آپ ریکوائرمنٹس گیدرنگ کر رہے ہوں, تو یو شوڈ بی فوکسنگ your attention a lot more on non-functional requirements than your traditional software development approaches. ہم جب ٹریڈیشنل سافٹ ویئر ڈیولپمنٹ اپروچز کی ریکوائرمنٹس کے حوالے سے بات کر رہے تھے تو اس وقت بھی ہم نے نان فنکشنل ریکوائرمنٹس کے اوپر بہت ایمفسائز کیا تھا, لیکن جب آپ ویب ڈیولپمنٹ کے اوپر آتے ہیں تو یہاں بہت ہی کیئرفل آپ کو ہونا پڑے گا. یو نیڈ ٹو گیو ایکسٹرا attention to understanding, to analyzing, and to including non-functional requirements in your software framework. اس میں جو 2-3 ہیں اسپیشلی جن کے اوپر میں چاہتا ہوں کہ آپ اسپیشل اٹینشن پے کریں وہ ہے سیکیورٹی کی. سیکیورٹی از دی موسٹ امپورٹنٹ نان فنکشنل ریکوائرمنٹ, بلکہ ان فیکٹ this becomes a functional requirement in web enabled systems, لیکن اس کو نان فنکشنل ریکوائرمنٹ کے حوالے سے بھی آپ نے ٹریٹ کرنا ہے, اور فنکشنل جو ریکوائرمنٹس ہیں وہ بھی ٹریٹ کریں گے. یا آپ if you're a little bit confused, I suggest you go back to our discussion on functional and non-functional requirements. Security کی جتنی امپورٹنس ہے ویب انیبل سسٹمس میں شاید کسی اور اسپیکٹ کی نہیں ہوگی. تو جب بھی جن بھی کی پروسیسز کے اوپر آپ فوکس کریں ان میں سے سیکیورٹی جو ہے دیٹ از موسٹ امپورٹنٹ. نمبر 2 ایفیشنسی از ویری امپورٹنٹ. اس کو پرفارمنس بھی آپ کہہ سکتے ہیں کہ ویب انیبلڈ سسٹمز میں یا ویب بیسڈ انفارمیشن سسٹمز کے لیے یہ انتہائی ضروری ہے کہ ان کی پرفارمنس اچھی ہو. اگر پرفارمنس اچھی نہیں ہوگی تو وہ آپ کی جتنی اچھی مرضی اچھی ویب سائٹ ہو, جتنی اچھی مرضی آپ سروسز پرووائڈ کر رہے ہوں, اس کے اوپر وہ پاپولر نہیں ہو سکتی, کسٹمرز اس کی طرف نہیں آئیں گے. پھر یوزر انٹرفیس ڈیزائن ہے. اس میں آپ گرافک آرٹسٹ کی ہیلپ لیں, کریٹو جو آرٹ ڈائریکٹرز ہیں ان کی ہیلپ لیں, ملٹی میڈیا اسپیشلسٹس کی ہیلپ لیں. یوزر انٹرفیس ڈیزائن جو ہے وہ ویب سائٹ کے لیے یا ویب بیسڈ انفارمیشن سسٹمز کے لیے ایک ایکسپیرئنس ہونا چاہیے. تو جو بھی آپ ویب سائٹ, ایک وزٹر ویب سائٹ پہ وزٹ کرتا ہے تو اگر اس نے وہ سروسز یا پروڈکٹس نہیں بھی خریدنی تو وہ ایک ایکسپیرئنس ہونا چاہیے بیکاز آف دا یوزر انٹرفیس ڈیزائن, اینڈ دس از ویری امپورٹنٹ. تو ہم نے سیکورٹی کی بات کی, پرفارمنس اور ایفیشنسی کی بات کی, پھر ہم نے یوزر انٹرفیس ڈیزائن کی بات کی. اس کے بعد ایک اور چیز ہے اور وہ ہے کسی سائٹ کی اسکیلیبلٹی کی. کہ لیٹس سے کہ آپ کی جو سائٹ ہے وہ بہت پاپولر ہو جاتی ہے تو اس کو اسکیلیبل آپ نے کتنا بنانا ہے, اور یہ بھی ایسی چیز ہے جس کو بعض دفعہ اگنور کر دیا جاتا ہے اور ایز اے ریزلٹ ایفیشنسی متاثر ہوتی ہے یا پرفارمنس متاثر ہوتی ہے, نمبر آف ہٹس جو ہیں وہ متاثر ہوتے ہیں. تو اگین اف آئی ووڈ لائک ٹو سمرائز دی کی ایریاز ویئر یو وانٹ ٹو focus while developing web-based information system is participation of the customers. You have a constraint on the delivery cycle, usually very short delivery cycles hain. Then the customer base is large, there are a lot of stakeholders. Then there are parties which are really not participating with you but sort of are working against you. Usme regulatory authorities hain, laws of land hain, international treaties hain. And you have currently no processes or no practices which are agreed upon by everybody. But I suggest you focus on non-functional requirements because naturally you will focus on functional requirements, but you need to put more emphasis on non-functional requirements while developing ویب بیسڈ انفارمیشن سسٹمز. اور ہم نے جو 4 نان فنکشنل ریکوائرمنٹس کی ڈسکشن کی ہے ان میں سیکورٹی ہے, پرفارمنس اور ایفیشنسی ہے, یوزر انٹرفیس ڈیزائن ہے, اینڈ لاسٹلی اسکیلیبلٹی ہے. ان 4 کو آپ لے کر پہ اسپیشل ایمفیسس رکھیں, اینڈ ود دی انوالومنٹ آف دا کسٹمر یو ول بی ایبل ٹو ڈیولپ ونڈرفل ویب سائٹس. سو ان دا نیکسٹ لیکچر we'll talk about another interesting topic. Till then, I take leave of you. Thank you.